it's Sandra from Make Money, Make Cash. Welcome to another episode. As always, we're putting the law of action back in attraction. And today I have a very special guest with me, Lisa Schermerhorn. She is a best-selling author of In Every Belief is a Lie, which we're going to be discussing in this episode. She's also an award-winning speaker. And she is a certified hypnotherapist, a master NLP practitioner, and so much more. So we're going to be talking to Lisa, find out more about her, the work she does, and why In Every Belief is a Lie. Lisa, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing? It's so amazing we can talk to people across the pond all over the world.
I'm so excited for this interview because I've looked at, you've got 20 years experience of being a transformational leader.
Yeah.
And that's in like mindset coaching, personal development. You do NLP and hypnotherapy, and you're a Y coach and a golf coach as well, I see. And I'm like, how do you fit all these things in? Like, tell me more.
Someone recently called me Forrest Gump. I don't know if you saw the movie, this person who's like done everything. And I was like, I guess I have. I didn't even realize. You know what? I love learning. It's a passion of mine, and I love helping other people. So through that, really when you think about golf, I don't really know a lot about golf, and I don't have to, or any sports. Like I helped my daughter's team win state championships. It's your mindset. So if you're thinking about things that are not getting you what you want, you just switch them. I remember my daughter's team was afraid of their coach and he was intimidating them. So we did a group meditation where they imagined that he was this big and he was squeaking like a mouse.
And did that work?
It did. They won.
Wow. So how did
Yeah.
you get into your line of work? Like, what's the backstory of why you're doing what you're doing? What's your why?
Right. Well, what happened was when I was at the age of 38, I had a nervous breakdown and I was suicidal. I didn't want to be here anymore. And that was based on the fact that as a young child, I had undiagnosed learning disabilities. So everyone could do their letters, their numbers, and they were reading. I remember in kindergarten, and I just thought, oh, I'm just stupid. I'm never going to be able to do what all these other kids do. They're just much smarter than I am. I spent every summer in summer school. I struggled in school, and I just started giving my power away to everyone who I thought was smarter than me, which was everyone, right? I just, oh, they know more, so I'll just listen to them. And I wasn't really learning how to discern. I wasn't learning what I did well. I just looked at everyone else would find their passion, but I would just not find mine. And I did go on to college. I realized that I just learned differently, and that ties into my why. I got married and I had different jobs, but that's what they were jobs. And then when I had this breakdown, I was going to therapy 2 to 3 times a week. And they were giving me coping skills, but they weren't getting to the root cause. I didn't understand why I felt the way I did. When I went into hypnosis, it took me into the mind, the part of the brain that had those memories of childhood. I didn't have access to them as an adult. But you ask your higher self, which has the answers to everything, took me right back to that time in my life when I felt so much despair, and it got compounded because when you believe something, then you start to attract all these circumstances that keep reinforcing your belief. So when someone suggested a hypnotist, and I was like, are they going to make me quack like a duck? But I was desperate and I tried it, and she was shifting and changing me. I was changing me actually, but she was helping me access those parts so easily and quickly. I thought, this is incredible. More people need to know about this. And because of her, I became a hypnotist. Then I went on to study neuro-linguistic programming, which is like Tony Robbins is the master of him. It's using language to help people heal. It's the study of excellence. And then I went on to study with shaman and healers around the world. So I take cutting edge techniques and ancient techniques and kind of fuse them together
Wow.
and made it really my own. And when I discovered my why, it brought everything together because when you have that younger part of yourself that feels broken, that part of us runs us. So no matter how much work you do, it's why I studied so much because I kept thinking that I was stupid. When I took my why assessment, I realized that my why was challenged. So I think outside the box. I'm different than other people. I learn differently. And I realized that that was my superpower. And I thought, oh, I'm not broken. I just learn differently. And actually, I am smart. I have the ability to problem solve. I have high emotional intelligence. It just shows up differently. And that was a light bulb that changed everything for me.
Wow. I'm sitting here thinking that's incredible. So with the hypnotherapist, did she like make you go to sleep, or were you awake when she was revealing this, helping you to like get these past like visions and what happened to you out? Were you asleep, or was that while you were awake?
So this is a big misunderstanding about hypnosis because most people think, oh, this person's going to come in and control me. And, in my experience, I can't make anyone do anything they don't want to do. We actually have 5 major brain frequencies. So right now we're in the state of what we call beta, and it's this quick wave, and that's where we're speaking, and that's our conscious mind. So if you've ever daydreamed and you're driving and you miss an exit, right? That's the state of alpha. And alpha is where we meditate. It's a place of deep learning. And so if you just slow everything down, that's all hypnotist does is you do a meditation where you're slowing everything down and then you're getting your mind chatter out of the way and then you're getting to what we call the unconscious part of you, but we're speaking to your higher self, the part of you that has all the answers. Because what I think is good for someone could be completely different than what they think. So I'm just the detective that's pulling information out of people. But I've had people get up and go to the bathroom during the middle of a session. It feels like when you've woken up from a deep sleep and you're finding your way to the bathroom without having a cup of coffee.
I never drink coffee, so that's
I don't either, but it's the way that people describe because you're in between the state of asleep and awake. And that's what
aha.
hypnosis is. So have you ever daydreamed?
I actually am very consciously aware of myself. So I'm like thinking all the time. So I don't
Okay.
think my brain's particularly normal. I'm consciously aware of my actions. I can think about my childhood and what affected it in present day while I'm awake, if you know what I mean. Because
Wow.
yeah, I found it really interesting that you said someone has to go into a hypnotic state for that. But it's like I can trace things back. I can have memories while I'm awake, but I've been able to remember things like I was on my potty years ago and I had an awakening that my mum was seeing me naked and I felt weird when I was on the potty. You know what I mean? Which
Wow.
is not normal, really. But yeah, I think I've got special gifts somehow.
That sounds like you do, because most people don't have access to those kinds of memories. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with someone and they'll be back to when they're 2 years old and they're like, I can't believe that this is still impacting me. I've even hypnotized people into the womb and they can feel what their mother's feeling. And I can also go back through your DNA into your ancestors because we inherit belief systems from our great, great, great grandparents. Because if they experienced like food issues or scarcity with money, that belief system gets passed down generationally.
Mm. I've been learning sort of in the last year or more about generational trauma, and it impacts us as adults a lot. And it's very difficult to break the habits and patterns of family and generational trauma.
Right.
And you know, I've got pre-birth trauma, which is very difficult because from the experts, but you're an expert as well, so maybe I could get your view on this.
Yeah.
From the experts that I've researched, if you've got pre-birth trauma, it's hardwired into your DNA, and therefore you cannot change it. I'm not saying that I can't change it because I've overcome huge social anxiety,
I
which I
do
never
this
got
work
with.
every day. You could
This
release that. You could release that in a session.
Basically, my mum was in labor for 15 hours and she couldn't have painkillers. She had to have extra oxygen for me. So I was a distressed baby in the womb with a 50-50 chance of living. So
Yeah.
that was very difficult for me and my mum. I never even knew till about 3 years ago that was a 50-50 chance of me and her living, you know? So I was like,
Wow.
wow. Yeah, I'm like, I'm glad to be
Wow.
alive, you know? So yeah, I just like from all the articles I've read, they say that because you've got no actual point to go back to for when you weren't traumatized or anxious, then that can't be changed. What's your view on that?
The conscious mind doesn't have access to that, but the unconscious does. And your unconscious, your soul, remembers everything, knows everything. So we can go back to that place in the womb and heal that baby Sandra.
Very
I do
interesting.
it all the time. And it's amazing. People were like, "Oh my God," because especially in the case when someone's adopted, right? Because now they're experiencing the trauma of the mother who's either maybe they were raped, maybe they are in a situation where they're in an abusive relationship or they're too young, whatever that is, that mother is going through grief, fear, anger, frustration. All of those emotions are now impacting that fetus as it's growing. And so oftentimes there are people, especially when a mother's going through a difficult time, will come in feeling unwanted and unloved from the moment they come into this world. Now, if you're in therapy, are they going to be able to access that? They
Yeah, it's
can't.
a lot of therapists, like counselor type therapists. Um, they a lot of them are trauma informed, but they're not actually trauma specialists, are they? And
I can't speak to it because I'm not a licensed mental health counselor. So I want to just preface this. But what I find is what they do is they give you coping skills, which can help, but it's like hanging on for dear life. And there are many who know EMDR, which is working with the unconscious mind, and there are many who do use hypnosis and a lot of other techniques. But what I have found is when you can get to the root cause of something, just the acknowledgement of it, like that part of you that is in pain, that suffered and almost died, that's part of you, and it's always there, underlying. It's always just there.
yeah, I mean, is there anything that can be done about that, or is it just acceptance and
Oh
learning
no.
techniques for living happily in spite of that?
No, I would do a hypnosis session on you and regress you back to that time in the womb. Go to the feelings of your mother and go to the feelings that you were feeling and release them. And it's a very simple technique that I use. And all you're doing is going to the feeling of it. And then we're releasing it. Should I let it go? Yes. Could I let it go? Yes. When now? And you repeat it over and over again until you're neutral, because the body holds on to these memories at a cellular level. And the idea is that when you release that, and then you replace it with what you wish you could have had instead. So I call this time travel for your emotions. You can't change what happened, but you can change the way you feel about it. And when you do that, it's like putting on a new pair of glasses and you see the world from a different perspective.
It's very interesting. I tried some hypnosis with, you know, Paul McKenna's stuff, and it actually wasn't good for my mind. It made my mind worse. So I think I've got a very
Interesting.
unusual mind, where
Interesting.
yeah, it just brought up stuff which wasn't good, so I couldn't continue with it. So It's very, very interesting that, because I spoke to another hypnotist about it last year actually, saying I don't think my brain works particularly normal in
So
that.
you may always be an alpha. Like you may always be in that state, that learning state. I met one other person who did, because when you're trauma informed, like if you were in trauma as a child, like I'm curious, when you do you see, like, when you see things, can you see your peripheral vision all the way out, like pretty far if you put your fingers out? Can you see like pretty far out?
While I'm talking to you now, I can see my fingers.
Yep. How far back can you go?
I can see this one now. This one's gone off screen, I think.
Yeah. But if it's pretty direct like that, you may be in constant alpha state, which is a constant state of you're already there. So it's just
Yeah.
accessing it and releasing it. So we might not even have to do a hypnosis on it. You just go into the feeling because you already have access, which
So
is fascinating.
yeah, because I'm always guided by my intuition all the time. I'm in a state of intuition
Yep.
constantly, which it seems rare as well, because I got someone in my inbox a few days ago and they're like, oh, you can attend this master class with me to, unleash your intuition. And I'm like, I live like that all the time.
Yep.
And I know that if I don't listen to my intuition and do what it tells me to do, then my life goes wrong and everything goes wrong and everything's off track. So I just every single day am in this intuition and I'm in a thinking state all the time. If you know what I mean, I'm like
Yeah.
consciously aware of myself like all the time. I was
Is
very
it,
sorry,
oh,
carry
I'm
on.
sorry. Is it thinking or is it downloads?
I get both. I get consciously being aware because I have had a lot of childhood trauma and I've had multiple traumas in my life that have happened in succession, so I have to deal with that. But I'm very consciously aware of like some of my I've had to work on my limiting beliefs over the last years. One of the most difficult things was actually I had the belief that every decision I made would be the wrong decision. um and it would go wrong, and so I only became consciously aware of that really in the year 2021, beginning of 2021. So I've worked on that for the last like 2+ years to overcome that. It's a really difficult thing because once you've grown up with that, you've got that pattern. It's very difficult to break that because you're having to break it yourself. So I kind of have I have intuition where I have like, you've got to do this next, Sandra, even if it doesn't make logical sense. But I also have the past that I'm unraveling and trying to course correct, if you like, or get new habits and new thinking to make my life better now from the traumas I've had. So I'm kind of working simultaneously. I'm very creative. When I write, that's when I'm at my best and in flow. That's when
Wow.
I'm totally me and at peace with my soul. That's the only thing really that 100% like makes me feel at peace when I'm doing the writing work. So, and dancing, I love dancing as well. And obviously I help asexuals on my other channels, so they're all good things.
Right.
But
You,
writing,
because you're really a visionary, and you have a topic that you talk about that I had never heard anyone talk about before. I didn't even know that this was something that exists. Although after 30 years of marriage, it looks pretty enticing.
yeah, I have to say that asexuality is not a lifestyle and it's not a coat you can try on and borrow or something. But yeah, a few people do think there's advantages of it, which there is a lot of advantages being asexual, but other people don't necessarily see that. But yeah, asexuality is a sexual orientation based on lack of sexual attraction, and there's a lot of myths and stereotypes about it. But I realized, looking back at my childhood and life, that I've always been asexual and didn't realize it. For example, when I was on the potty at 2 years old, I became consciously aware that I didn't like my own mum seeing me naked. That's very strange for a kid to be
Right.
aware of her body like that, but I've become more aware of myself and my body and my needs since I know I'm asexual. It's opened up a whole new lease of life, if you know what I mean. And I used to be an old soul when I was a kid, and now I'm a young soul. I've switched ages in that respect. So it's very interesting.
Well, when you say young soul, I still think you have tremendous amount of wisdom. So when you say young soul, I think of more the playful, like the eternal child, because you are very playful, but you still have the old soul wisdom.
Yes, this is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, as I believe in reincarnation, I don't know if you do, but I believe I've been here in a past life, probably multiple past lives for a long time. And I believe I have a soulmate actually who's Indian. I keep saying that. I'm sure I was with an Indian guy in a past life. I just feel that. And so, you know, I have a lot of wisdom from those previous times in lives and this one as well. This one's been particularly interesting, shall I say, with all its challenges and stuff. But I'm doing well now. So yeah, so we talked about your learning difficulties. How was that at school for you and with your parents? Were your parents accepting of your learning difficulties and do you call it difficulties or do you call it disabilities? Which terminology do you like
You
to
know
use?
what? It was never diagnosed, but and I will say, like, when I write, I transpose letters, I transpose numbers. It I have to repeat things over and over again. So I'm kind of self-taught in how I learn. I didn't learn in the conventional way. But in my family, grades were very important and there was a lot of focus on that. And because wasn't up to par, there was a lot of angst around my lack of good grades. But at the same time, I'm also very creative. I'm an artist. I paint, and in the work that I do, I have a very creative mind, and I've also realized that there's different levels of smart. There's different types of emotional intelligence. Dr. Howard Gardner at Harvard University talks about the 9 different types of intelligence. There's some people who have, who are athletes, who are incredible at understanding how the body works and doing that. Whereas I could never keep up with an athlete. So we each have our own unique special gift. And I think that being put in a box, especially so getting into like the why, the why, when I found out my why was challenge, these are people who think outside the box and they're visionaries. You can't take, hence the purple hair. I don't know if you see.
Oh, I just thought it's beautiful. It blends in with your top, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
I just thought it's natural. I didn't see
Yeah.
it. Travel.
Yeah, and I live on the side of a mountain in a log home. Like, everything I do is to be different. It's not always better. I just like to separate myself and be unique, and that drives me. So being an out of the box problem solver gets me really excited because what I did and what I needed, like I wanted to become the person I was looking for 20 years ago, right? Because that person didn't exist for me, because I needed someone who was going to take me outside the box to help me find, to help me heal and figure out what all this pain was. But I also had to be ready. And I would imagine a lot of your followers, I mean, being asexual is not something that's conventional, right? It's not
Yeah.
something that is necessarily always accepted. Although with the whole, thing about you know, people's sexual orientation is becoming more out there now, and more people, but that doesn't mean that family's going to accept you. And the whole idea of dealing with, do you want to get married? Are you going to have children? Are you not going to have children? All of those things are a constant reminder and bombardment of being something or someone that's different than what we consider conventional, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want sex. I don't want marriage. I don't want kids. And I even prefer to live separately in a relationship. So I'm super far out unconventional. So it's very difficult when you're on the dating scene to try and find someone who's got that type of mindset. And I love being public. I love the fact my life's public, which not many people do. And I don't care what people think of me. I like being free to be me.
That takes a lot of courage, right? And there's a scale of map of consciousness, and the map of consciousness, Dr. David Hawkins talks about it in his book Power versus Force. So between 700 and 1,000 is enlightenment. It's your frequency that you put out, and 20 is shame, right? So that's really low. The frequency of love is 500. The frequency of authenticity is 4,000 times love, right?
I'm just, wow.
Having having the courage to fully put yourself out there and be you. And that's when you manifest. That's when you really bring things to you and step out there.
Wow.
So extraordinary. There aren't a lot of people who have the courage. And if you look at everyone has something. Everyone has a secret that no one wants anyone else to know, right? None of us get out unscathed. We all have something unique that we bring to the world that we may carry shame around, or a trauma, or something that has, that people really struggle with. And it's important because to acknowledge it and heal it, because when we stuff that down, when we stuff our trauma down, and all of that, it has to come out somewhere. So that's where anxiety comes from. That's where we can have body mind connection, where we can create issues in our physical being, in our body. So we are meant to feel something and then let it go. It's like a flow of information. We're okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. But so many of us were taught big boys don't cry. So many of us are taught, don't, just buck up. Just deal with it and move on. When you don't acknowledge it, it gets stuck. And that's where the problems get created.
Suppressed and repressed emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah, they get stuck in the body, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
And it's a shame with guys. I mean, the highest suicide rate I read is actually in guys, not women. Is that what you've heard?
What? That doesn't surprise me, because men are taught as young children, don't not to feel, don't cry. And that's the worst thing you can do for a man, because then they're pent up, and then it comes up. If they're not going to grief, they're going to anger, which is the next level up. And that's where you get people who rage and have major anger issues, because they haven't had an outlet for their grief and allow themselves to heal it. And a lot of men don't go for therapy either. And that's a gross generalization, but I find far more women who go for help than men.
Yeah, it's still a stigma, unfortunately. It shouldn't be. I mean, there are so many people, guys, that struggle with mental health, and it's because of the reasons that you say. They're taught to be macho and to push their feelings and emotions down and to be in control. And being in control means you can't express emotions is actually not true. You're more in control if you can express your emotions in a favorable way rather than blurting it out and punching someone. That's actually out of control, because you're penting them up and then you're ready to explode, aren't you? So it's actually more control by allowing them to be free and release.
No, it's very true. And I had someone close to me who said to me, I don't understand what the purpose of emotions are. And I was really, really shocked. I was really shocked. And I was like, wow, this is something that's really important for you to learn to go into those emotions. But for someone who's very linear in their thinking, emotions feel messy. They're too messy. They don't, but what happens is they're not given a coping skill. And that's what I give people, are a coping skill to release the emotions so they don't have to sit with it. Because I've had people say, if I allow myself to feel, it's never going to end. And that's not something that, we want to deal with, is that, that's not true. It's the fear of bringing those thoughts and those emotions up is what people really struggle with. And so the more we believe in ourselves and the more vulnerable we become, the more we become authentic and to who we are. But it is scary. I'm not gonna say that. Did you ever have any fear of coming out with your beliefs, and how were people gonna, or your family members gonna deal with that, or they pretty much already knew?
It's really funny. So I didn't realize coming out as asexual was a big deal. I didn't see it as coming out, but apparently it is, because I didn't even know at the beginning that asexuality is part of the LGBT plus QIA. It's the A for asexual. It stands for a couple of other things. I didn't realize it was that. And so when I found out as asexual, it was actually horrific the way I found it out, because it was through a counselor who said to me, when I told her I just want kissing and romance, I don't want sex and relationship, she said, that I would have to have sex in order to keep a good guy. And this is a professionally trained NHS counsellor. So I was just absolutely horrified. Then I went home and Googled, I love kissing, but not sex. And it came up with asexuality.org. And then I discovered all about asexuality. And that's how I found out about it. So I do actually believe everything happens for a reason. I had that woman not been very bad in what she said to me, saying basically, I can't get love unless I have sex, then, and I can't get a good guy for me unless I have sex, then I wouldn't have gone home and Googled that. And so that's how I discovered it. And it took me 3 weeks to kind of come to terms with where I fall on the asexual spectrum, because it's huge. But I just phoned my parents up when I was walking down 4th Street in my city in Exeter, up the street, like off the high street. And I was going, oh, hey, mum, my dad listens to everything my mum says. So for some reason, there's a thumbs up bubble come up.
I don't know. Did someone must have agreed with you?
I get that come up on my YouTube. It comes up magically for me.
That's really funny. That's awesome.
So I was walking like just in 4th Street and I was on the phone to my mum. My dad listens to everything my mum says, so I've kind of got used to the fact there's no privacy with one of them usually anymore. That's the way they are. They've been married like nearly 55 years this year, so in May, which is incredible. And yeah, so I just walked down the road saying, oh, I think I'm asexual. I've discovered, this sexual orientation that's a lack of sexual attraction, because I'm nudity repulsed. And my mum always thought it's because I had an insecurity and there was something weird about me, but she calls me weird still and I don't care. And so I'm like, because it's quite rare even for asexuals to be nudity repulsed, but she understood it. And by the second phone call, because I phoned her again when I discovered a bit more, she's like, oh, we think it sounds like you. So I think they'd been looking it up or something. And that was it. I was no big deal to me. And then obviously now I kind of lead a community where it is a big deal to a lot of people, because, it's scary for them coming out. And I just did it really casually on the phone down the street, which anyone could hear. But not everyone was receptive. There was a woman I worked with and she was walking home the same way as me, part of the same way, and she's like, oh, but you're always looking at guys, you're always talking about guys. And I said, yeah, I do get aesthetically and romantically attracted to them, but not sexually attracted to them. So she didn't really understand. She's like, you just haven't met the right person yet. And that's a common thing we get told. And I wish I'd said, no, I haven't met the right asexual guy for me yet.
How ironic if the two of you met and then you ended up having sex.
What, me and an asexual guy? There are asexuals that do have sex, by the way. The trouble is some guys that say they're asexual end up not being, and I don't know if that's because I'm just uber attractive to them, or if that's because they weren't asexual in the first place. But there are some people who are not asexual that come into the community and pretend to be, which is not good. But yeah, I get the hugely hypersexual guys after me. So I get a lot of sexual guys highly attracted to me, and I'm like, oh my god. So I am.
That's funny.
Yeah, I do have like a sensual side to me, and I am a hyper romantic and hyper kisser. So I do kind of have some sexual behavior, but zero sexual attraction. I can kiss for long periods of time. Like my longest kissing session was last year for it was over 4 hours, nearly non-stop. Yeah. And I don't get bored and I don't want sex. He's like, how are you holding yourself back? I'm like, I'm not. I don't get sexual attraction. It doesn't make me want to have sex, however much I kiss you. And people, so I know I'm genuinely asexual. It's not because I have had trauma in the past, but that's not why I'm asexual. I had sexual relationships after I had trauma, So right. I just know, looking back, there was an incident that went on when I was 6, and there was a boyfriend at the time that wanted to do a doctors and nurses thing. Well, that's what a counsellor said at 17. I was traumatized still at 17 years old from that experience because I hated it, and she couldn't understand why I was crying. I'm like, well, I felt invaded. It was wrong. And she's like, I don't get it. It's just normal. I'm like, it's not to me. And so, yeah, exactly. This was a counsellor at college. I haven't had very good counsellors and therapists. I tend to look after myself mostly these days and work out things myself.
Well, but here's a belief that I have. If it's uncomfortable for you, then it's not good for you, right? Regardless of what other people feel like what the norms are, because that's who you are and it's uniquely you. And, there's something to be said about romance and having that, just being able to have those kinds of relationships where you're just, in the beginning stages. So I imagine that would just keep things going.
I just think it's so much more exciting having the kissing, the romance, and everything you have in the beginning relationship where all the excitement is. I think, yeah, if I was with a guy like that, he'd be stuck to the ceiling, so I off dopamine of all my kisses. You don't need tablets. You don't need other. Well, of course, he needs other stuff in his life, not just me.
Right.
But, which is healthy and important. I have to stress. But I just thought, like, in terms of dopamine, it'd be like kissing like a full body workout sometimes for me.
That's so interesting. The human beings are so complex when you think about what our needs are and everything. And I love the idea that you have this support group for people and how you can give a voice to something that, whereas people who don't understand that or may not even understand what they're feeling, you're giving it language. And once you give it language, it was like when I found my why and I was finally able to say, oh, I'm not broken. This is my superpower. Like, this is your superpower and you're helping people. And so it's the gift. But when you don't own it, it becomes like this ball of chain of shame, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't experience shame over being asexual, but there's a lot of people that do actually, and they feel despondent and they feel discouraged and they feel like they don't want to be asexual, some of them,
No.
and it's really
No, I can
difficult.
understand that because people don't want to be different, right? They want to fit in. And I've helped people transition from male to female also because, families didn't understand. This was 10 years, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when people didn't really do these kinds of things. It wasn't really out there as much as it is now. And the trauma that happens around family and the lack of understanding and friends, and sometimes people have children and they're like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean you suddenly want to change who you are, dress differently, and all that? It's a struggle for people. And I love the fact that you own who you are in such a big way, and you have such joy in that, and you're a great example of that, and a beautiful mindset for people who want to be able to aspire to be like you.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice.
No,
Yeah,
it's true.
I do. I've always been different. I was different at school and stuff like that. So like having asexuality accentuate my difference is quite good in a positive way. So I want to talk about your book now, in Every Belief is a Lie. So tell me more about what this book is. I have read about it, to do with like
Mhm.
conditioning. People are conditioned and
Right.
programmed, which I found out about in 2012 when I started my entrepreneurial journey. And I saw Tony Robbins live on stage at the Excel Center. That was the start of
Wow.
my journey. But so I became aware of conditioning, how much we're conditioned by society and things. But I'd like you to explain more about it in
Right.
your own words.
So in my research and all my studying over the years, what I discovered I started talking about the different brain frequencies we're at. So we talked about alpha, but when we're born, our brainwave stage is in delta, which is this really big wave. And I want you to think about what a newborn baby has to learn: sight, sound, language, taste, emotions. They're being bombarded and they're absorbing at a large scale. Now, if you think about this, they may not be verbal, but they are absorbing everything. Now, if you're a deeply religious family, the food, the clothing, the ritual of prayer, all of that is now being programmed into you, right? If someone's evangelical Christian or Catholic or Jewish or Muslim, that is like, people ask, well, how did you become your religion? I don't know, it was just, I grew up in it, right? But what if it's not what you believe? If you try and leave that, it threatens the community, right? It threatens the family unit, because now they're like, now they don't want to question why they believe what they do. They were told to believe that, and the people before then were told to believe that. Now, in some families, they're not so attached. Let's say it's not religion, culture, right? Some cultures are all about education. You need to go to school, you need to go to an Ivy League school, and education is everything. Other cultures, you get into high school and you better start getting out there and start working because you have to help support the family. And education isn't as important. So as people see, if someone grows up in a rural area in a farm and they're out there working every morning before they go to school versus growing up in a city where they're going to museums and they're experiencing, a lot of culture. So all of this plays into the lens of how we see the world. And in NLP, we refer to it as our map of the world. So what happens is, as we've grown and lived our lives, we can often start to live vicariously through our family members. So let's say everyone in the family has been accountants, and they're like, oh, you need to come into the family business and be an accountant. Well, I want to be an artist. I don't want to be an accountant. What do you mean you want to be an artist? We have this business. It needs to be passed down. So all of these things come into play where you're butting up against belief systems. Now, what also comes into play is ancestral beliefs that we inherit. So if you had, so there's a book, Dr. Mark Wolin, It Didn't Start With You. He talks about this. He had a client where he had a woman came into the world not wanting to be here, always wanting to die. That's not normal for a child, right? Unless there was trauma in the uterus. But she made a statement to her therapist and said, sometimes I just want to incinerate myself, right? That's not a normal thing. So he asked her, did you have a family member who survived the Holocaust? Yes. So she had taken her grandmother's and inherited that, and she was living that. So they did a study with mice, and they shocked the mice every time they smelled a particular smell. So they associated the smell with the shock. Their grandpups, just from the smell of that smell, would run without a shock. That's how it works. So we pass this down. So we also pass down leadership skills. We pass down musical skills and singing and all of those things. So it's not all bad. So I don't want people to think that. I just focus on the parts that we inherit that are leaving us stuck. If there's a family member who dealt with deep, issues around depression and scarcity, and then you're like, well, I didn't have that growing up. Why am I so afraid to lose all my money? It's like this constant thing because it's inherited. Now, through talk therapy, you don't have access to that, right? But when you go into these other states of consciousness, like alpha or theta, or what I do is I take people through their DNA. We go into alpha state, and now we go back through their childhood, then go back through the DNA and ask to go to the ancestor who's the origin, and we heal them. And so you work as a proxy. You don't even have to know. I've gone back 10 generations. You don't even have to know they are. It just comes up female, okay? And then they'll start telling the story. It's fascinating. And people say, well, how do I know that was true? And I'm like, do you feel better? And they say yes. And I said, then it worked. Doesn't matter. So all of those beliefs that come in through your ancestors, and then you have through in utero, and then all of the stuff from our childhood. Now, what I talk about is I give stories of my own personal experience. I give tools and techniques in each chapter, and I kind of take people on a journey. People said to me, reading your book is like sitting across from you having a cup of coffee and a conversation. I wanted to keep it simple so that people could understand the progression of how we get programmed, why it happens, what you can do about it, and then help you discover more about who you are as a human being. Like, how lucky are you, Sandra, that you know who you are and know your purpose? And there are a lot of people who do, and then there are a lot of people who are very lost, because what happens if I really put myself out there? What will people think? So by getting rid of that fear And I had that. It's really interesting. So because of my belief around not being smart, that held me back from writing a book. And so I at one point I went to a psychic and they're like, where's your book? Where's your book? You're supposed to write a book. And I'm like, oh my God, you're like the third one that's told me I have a book. And I sat down and I wrote down all of my fears. Who are you to write a book? What do you have to say that other people haven't said before? Why would anyone listen to you? You know, all of these things. And I started using my own techniques. So I started releasing them one after another. Should I let it go? And then I replaced those thoughts with more positive affirmations. And then I forgave myself. And I forgave others, like the teachers and people in my life who, you know, reinforced the fact that I wasn't smart in that belief. I let go of everything. And as soon as I did that, it was like the information came pouring through me. And what I will say is, if you have this image, this metaphor of a highway and a giant boulder in the middle of the highway, who put that boulder there? I did. So if I move that boulder, I can go anywhere. Right? If I get rid of that boulder, now I can start bringing in all the things that I've dreamed of. And as soon as I did, that book was written in 5 months. It went bestseller, and then I was on 7 stages and all kinds of podcasts.
Wow.
And it was just like my life, like in a snap, changed overnight. You know, my 60-year overnight success.
Wow. Incredible. How many years? You look young.
I'm 61.
Oh, no way. Oh my gosh. I thought you were like in your 40s.
Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, you're looking young. You're living your purpose. That's why you're so young looking.
Well, thank you. I like to think so. Yeah, my 33-year-old son would have issue with me being 40.
I like younger guys, so I'm
Yeah.
unapologetically into younger guys. I'm an asexual cougar as well, and I don't
Oh,
have
you
any
are
problems.
funny.
I don't have any problems saying that, you know, because I'm true to who I am, and I can't live someone else's life just because they disapprove. Do you know what I mean? So
Well,
yeah,
you're a great example of that. I really admire you. And you know, more people as they see you will be inspired by that. And here's what I always say. I don't have to live your lifestyle. I don't have to necessarily believe in it. But the fact is I can admire your voice and your courage and your ability to put yourself out there as a visionary and someone who can be a voice for people who are really struggling. And that's one of the things that I truly admire and love about you. And I said this before, but doing this work, there's so few people who have that ability to do it. And what I say, it doesn't take a lot to be able to do it if you want to.
yeah. I mean, I know you were asking me about fears earlier, so there were some fears I had, like before I started my channel in 2015. That's how long I've been doing it now.
Wow.
October 2015 I started. I did have the fear about talking, for example, about sex, because I used to be very, very shy, and I didn't used to talk about sex with anyone apart from past boyfriends when I was in a relationship with them. And so I was recently on, well, actually it came out very, very recently, I've got to promote it, is Amplify You. And I was saying on there that my mindset was like, you can either take the information of your past sex life, because I have had sex in the past, because I was in heterosexual relationships for like years of my life. So I've got a lot of experience there to help asexuals navigate that. And I thought you can either take that to the grave with you, or you can tell people about it to help others. And if you take this thing to the grave with you, you're not helping anyone. It's useless, you know. So it's better to be bold and brave and to do things in spite of fear and anxiety in order to be your best self and to help others. So, you know, like I talk about masturbation and sex like I'm drinking water now, but when I first started, I was so when I first started, I was like going red and I was blushing and I was like cringing in my head. And there every year there's like challenges of other things I want to do that requires me to push through my comfort zone and fear, because I do actually have an anxiety condition. But I manage it really well, and I do things in spite of my anxiety. And I do question, like, if I didn't have anxiety, would I actually be pushing myself as much to do things that I do? So sometimes your mental health condition or your disabilities, because I got fibromyalgia, actually can be your superpower as well, like you were saying with the learning difficulties. Because I don't think I would push myself to do as much. I think if I hadn't got anxiety, I would just be milling along now, probably, in my life, and I wouldn't be achieving all the things I'm achieving. And to achieve them with an anxiety condition, for me, is like more empowering. It's like, because you've got extra obstacles to overcome, Sandra, that some other people don't. So,
but your greatest challenge is your greatest is your superpower, right? And I say that with everyone. Like my belief that I'm not smart propelled me to study everything. Like everything I got my hands on, I it was never enough for me. And it finally one of my mentors said, Lisa, you have what you need. You don't have to study anymore. And that insecurity that I had because not feeling smart. And then suddenly I'd be around people and they're like, how do you know that? How do you know that? I'm like, oh, I actually do know things. And then the more I started to own it, the more I realized that if I hadn't grown up with that, I wouldn't have had this drive. I wouldn't have had this desire to, I wouldn't have been suicidal. I wouldn't have gone on this journey. I would, do I want to go through that again? No. Okay. I don't, but I'm glad that I'm where I am. And, talk about one of my philosophies in life is when I go to make a decision, I think about myself at the end of my life on my deathbed. Would I have regretted this? And I can't tell you how many times I have just taken this giant leap, even times where someone asked me to go, to Europe on a trip and I didn't have the money and something kept saying that there was something important that I needed to go. I didn't know why. It's that instinct, that intuition. And I went, and then that trip changed my life in such a huge way. So sometimes we just have to get out of our logical mind and go in and learn to trust that instinct and saying, would I have regretted this if I said no? And here's the other thing. How many people try and talk us out of our dreams? Almost everyone.
Ourselves as well included.
Yeah.
And we have to battle our own minds a lot of the time, like the mind that's the fearful one that keeps cropping up, that even though you do a lot of work on yourself, it's always like kind of coming back like a boomerang, and you're like, no, I'm here now, I'm in charge of my life, not the other one, not the fearful one.
Exactly. So here's something that I just, find for people to think about is think about what your greatest wounding is. Think about what your greatest fears are. And that is the key to unlocking your greatest gifts. When you're willing to look at those, oh, I just got the chills. When you, I always get these confirmation chills. It's so much fun.
Bless.
But when you look at that, someone might say, like you said, you have fibromyalgia. Now, there are a lot of people who, and you say it in such a
superpower.
There are people who have had very tragic events that have happened in their lives. And here's what I say, because we talk about past lives. I do past life regressions and life between lives as well. We could go down this whole metaphysical world as well. But when you look at these parts of your lives and you see that, I believe that we contract for certain things to happen. We have an agreement before we come into this world. And think about how that would change the way you see the world. Let's say I'm just making that up. But what if you made an agreement with your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, people in your life who hurt you badly, people who lifted you up, that you, before you came in, you planned all this. And someone on a soul level who really loves you said, I'm going to sacrifice in this lifetime, and I'm going to create pain for you in this life so that you will overcome this, and this will be your gift. Then it helps you forgive. It helps you have peace and understanding. I chose this. I chose this life. And then I don't have to be a victim. I take responsibility for everything in my life. And now I'm like, not woe is me, it's this person's fault, because when you blame someone else, you get three fingers sticking back at you. So take responsibility for the fact that, yeah, I'm different. It's okay. It's okay. Not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to be okay with what I have to say, what I do. But the great loss of not showing up fully with your gifts and thinking about that at the end of your life, what would that look like? So if you can just release a couple of things that are keeping you stuck in that and keep you in fear, because if you let go of that fear, what would your life look like? It could be extraordinary.
I mean, I personally, for me, I do things that my parents don't agree with. So I actually do things that is not the way I've been brought up. And so I'm the opposite too. So I love my parents dearly, but you can still love and respect someone without actually living their life and the life they want you to live. And I am very, very open about the fact that I do live differently to my parents. I'm the exact opposite to them in many, many, many aspects. And I've had to separate myself from them in terms of like living my own life the way I want to live it. My dad actually does secretly stalk me on social media, and I found he was subscribed to my Asexualized channel. It's so funny. So he does actually watch me on social media, so not at the moment because he's like not well nowadays, but he was doing that. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get back to that at some point. But yeah, so he does watch my Asexualized channel, and I talk about very personal, intimate things. And obviously, I know my dad watches it, but I won't stop being me. I won't stop serving my people and helping them, because I've grown so much as a person in the years since I've been in the entrepreneur space. And I did learn, is it from Les Brown, I think, said about being on your deathbed, like picture it, you're on your deathbed. And that's who I learned that from, like, would you have any regrets if you're on your deathbed right now of not doing the things that you wanted to do? And make sure you do all the things you want to do so you don't have regrets. So I live my life very freely. I do things that I know my parents wouldn't necessarily approve of, and some they definitely don't approve of. And it's brave doing that. It's very hard. Because obviously I come from a cultural background. I come from a no sex before marriage background, whereas I've had sex in my past heterosexual relationships. They're introverts. I'm extrovert. They like peace and quiet. I like noise. My vibe is noise, vibrancy, energy, lights, camera, action. I'm very different to most people. Most people are like nature. I'm not really that interested in nature. A tree's lovely. It provides me oxygen, but that's like that. Yeah, you see, admitting that to the world is difficult because most people are like, nature's where it's at, peace is where it's at. My peace is when I'm in Disneyland Paris, I'm going on the rides and got Disney music and lights everywhere, because I'm at peace with my soul, because that's my vibration, that's my energy level. And I have to go out and be around people to energize myself. It's literally like being like Iron Man, where I'm plugging myself in. I get energized by being around people. When I've been indoors for quite a while, because I do a lot of work indoors, then I notice that my energy levels go down, and it's because I haven't been around people. I don't even have to talk to someone. I just need to be around people and sat there with them. But this is in real contrast to how I used to be years ago. I used to be introverted. I used to be shy. I used to be suicidal. I didn't have a life purpose. I hated myself for my life. I had so much trauma. So I've had to overcome all that, and I've had to like say, this is me and I'm going to do it. And I've had to believe in myself when others don't. And I've had to do things that others don't necessarily agree with, even those dearest to me that I love, because I have to be me and I have to live my true authenticity in this life with no regrets. And that is the hardest thing to do, but it makes you super strong. But it's like you're having to deal with like your past trauma, the current difficulties you've got with people not necessarily agree with who you are, but I still stand in my personal power and I still become more of me. And this year I'm becoming, I'm doing stuff with my Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual book that I'm close to publishing. I meant to get out before Christmas, but as I was speaking at Being Become Summit, thank you, I couldn't actually get that published. But that is really personal. So my channel, my Asexual Life channel, my other channel is like a behind the scenes reality TV show, and I'm share very personal stuff. And the book is like a behind the scenes of the behind the scenes, but it's based on my hyperromanticism. It's exploring my feelings and emotions in real time, and it's hard to do that, but I want people to have more of me. And I think it's important because I've got like life lessons intertwined in that for people to learn through me. And I think one of the things that's difficult and that we have to accept sometimes is sometimes our mind like tells us we should think a certain way because that's where society dictates to us, but actually our reality isn't matching what we think we should be thinking. And I think we have to deal with our own reality. So for example, I'm a hyper romantic that has a lot of issues that is hard to deal with, but I have to be true to myself and say, hey, I am a hyper romantic. I try to manage it and find better and better ways of managing it, but it has this effect on me. And, and I decided to write a book about that. I thought, okay, Sandra, be you and write a book to help others of how it actually is for you. It's very unique. And so, people can learn from that. So I think it's good to use your powers and your own qualities to be able to help the world in some ways rather than battling against yourself. It's good to accept who you are, even with your quirkiness, your imperfections, and your far out hyper romanticism. It's kind of crazy. That gets a very crazy life, but then I have so many adventures with it that I don't think I would have else. I push myself out of my comfort zone because of my belief that I've got a soulmate in a past life, like trying to find my Indian soulmate since 2014. I've just done so much crazy things. I go to Bollywood parties on my own and stuff like that, which are, run by the local students at uni and stuff like that, which I started doing the year before last. And it's like, wow, I never thought I'd be doing that. It takes bravery to go out and put yourself around like nearly the only white girl in a bunch and crowd of Indian people who are lovely. And, I reprogram my mind, by the way, using NLP. I don't know if I've told you that, to be happy being single, because I was codependent years ago. So I reprogrammed my mind using NLP because I did a coaching academy course. I met a guy called Andrew Jenkins, who is an NLP practitioner who taught us some NLP techniques just in that. And I reprogrammed my mind to be happy being single. So I've been predominantly single now since 2011, which is a long time. And since 2017, I've been completely single. I've been on some dates, but that's been it. So yeah, and I reprogrammed my mind to be like 21 years old using NLP. And I've been like that since I had my first 21st mindset birthday in 2017. I tried the age of 23 for a while, but I prefer 21. So every year now I have a 21st mindset birthday, and I don't relate to my birth certificate age at all, apart from I am wise, like you said, very wise. So to me, it's like a piece of paper that I don't relate to. And I see some other people the similar age to my birth certificate age, and I'm like, I look nothing like you. You look about 20 years older than me. So I like guys in their early to mid 20s because that's my mindset age. And I live like a teenager on purpose, and I love it. And it was Tony Robbins that woke me up to be my younger teenager self that I was always born to be. When I saw him, and he got us to change our state through movement and music. So most people come from a Tony Robbins event going, I'm really mature now, and I'm this adult, and I've stopped all this stuff, and I've stopped going out clubbing and stuff. I'm like, I need to go clubbing for my soul. I need to do young, fun teenager stuff, because when I don't, it drains my energy. The more I do it, the more I come alive and be me. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you, because obviously you're a master NLP practitioner. I don't know if you've ever had anyone else reprogram their mind to be like 21 years old.
No, I haven't had that, but it's the power of your mind and your subconscious. I've watched people will themselves to live and will themselves to die. You have such power in your thoughts because we are creators that, once you put yourself into that mindset, then you create that, and then you have these parties, and then you have these people in your life, and then that's what you attract. What people don't understand is we have this part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And it's a big word for, how many times have you bought a car and you think no one else? Okay. So oftentimes you'll get someone who buys like this red sports car, and you're like, it's the only one out there. I've never seen one like it out there. And you buy it, and now you see it everywhere. Like you buy this beautiful pink sweater, and now everyone has that sweater. It's like, because your brain, because we get hit with millions and billions of bits of information that our senses are not capable don't have the capacity to absorb. So what's happening is you're training your brain to attract something that you want. You're retraining that. So now all of those experiences are coming to you, because if you decided that you wanted to be a mature, person who went to afternoon tea and sat home on the weekends
Oh my God.
and be happy with that, again, you can't make someone do something they don't want to do. If I tried to hypnotize you into that, you would laugh at me and tell me and shut off, and
I feel
hang
like
up
I'm not
on me.
doing it. I feel like I'm
No,
not doing it.
no, but you took something that's already innate in you. There's a fellow who channels, his name is Bashar, and he was talking about this, that
Brendan Bouchard?
no, it's Bashar.
Oh,
But anyway, he channels this entity. I don't know, but he talks about the fact that when we talk about law of attraction, we are already this big beacon, right? We already have everything we need to attract. It's all the stuff that we put in the way, that is in the way, that keeps us from those things coming to us. So when they're not coming to us, that means that we're doing something to block it. It's not us having to attract it by achieving something. It's the thoughts and the mindsets, because we're creator beings.
so how does that relate to money? Obviously, because this is a make money, make cash channel for people that have money blocks and limiting beliefs. How did they
Yeah.
get those limiting beliefs, and how should they get rid of them? Like, have you got any
Okay.
techniques to show us now?
Yeah, I do. And here's a funny story. I was doing a money mindset program, and I showed people a picture of a mansion. And I asked everyone to look at that mansion. Tell me about the people who live in that house. Oh, they hate each other. They're getting a divorce. Their kids hate them. Their kids are on drugs, and they can't afford to heat the house. And I was like, wow. And then I asked everyone here, who here wants to make $1 million a year? And everyone raised their hand. I said, well, if you want to make $1 million a year, but you think people with money are unhappy, how are you going to ever attract that? So if you have this belief that people with money are evil, people with money are unhappy, or that it's for other people, not me, you want to list what your beliefs are, and you want to release it and then replace it with what you wish you could have had instead. Now, it could also be ancestral. Like you could have a grandparent who survived the Depression or the potato famine or whatever that is. And that's now inherited because it's vocal programming from parents. Money doesn't grow on trees. Save your pennies. Then there's Bible verses about not being able to get into heaven and through the eye of a needle. There's all kinds of things that break us down. So it's about acknowledging, what is your belief system? Where did it come from? And then what I like to do is break it down to and each individually. And then it's, should I let it go? Yes. Could I let it go? Yes. When? Now. You're identifying where in your physical body it is, and you release it. And when you release it, you become free. And that's what happened. And when I did that, the title of my book came. In every belief is a lie. And if you look at the word belief, lie is in the middle of it. And then that inspired chapter after chapter. I just started writing. But I tried to write for 15 years. I had to release the block that I wasn't smart enough.
Wow.
And so that's what we have to do, is look at what's holding us back around what about money? Because there's so many different levels when you talk about your belief systems around money. It can come from religion. It can come from your parents. It can come from a trauma, like you got fired and someone said to you, never amount to anything. I mean, I've seen that before. There are people with money who have scarcity issues, who never feel like it's enough. So they run themselves into the ground. So you see these multimillionaires who have to, the more they make, the bigger the lifestyle they make, the more panicked they are, the more money they have to make, and they end up on this hamster wheel, and they're not happy either. There are a lot of people who have money who are philanthropists, who do great things with money, and yet I invite you to look at a movie. How many movies portray people with money in a good light? That's programming.
Yeah, adverts and all sorts of stuff, media, a lot of it's
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
like
you're
the wolf,
all being programmed by that.
yeah, like the wolf of
Wall
Wall
Street.
and Wolverine. Then you see, that's my young teenager mind. The wolf of Wolverine. I was
Too
going to say,
funny.
my mind decides to make up things and put them together that are strange. But there we go. The wolf of whatever you
Of, of Wall Street.
that
Yes.
was. I know there's quite, there are billionaires and millionaires that aren't happy, are they? Some of them are depressed. So money doesn't bring happiness to everyone, but it's a belief around money then when they have it that's the issue, not
Or
just
celebrities, right? Celebrities, people. Oh, once I made it. Jim Carrey, I think, talked about this, and other celebrities too. And they go, "Oh, you work so hard to suddenly become famous, and then a whole new set of problems happens." Right? Could you imagine trying to go to the grocery store or go to a party or meet someone? You don't know if those people like you for you or they're trying to glom onto you. And now you've got all the, a whole new set of problems. So you have to be right with you no matter what. You have to love yourself and you have to be right for you. And I was like, well, what is self-love anyway? What does that even mean? And I remember really struggling with that. I'm like, does that mean I have to and this is fake, right? This is
I
like
actually do hug
pretending.
myself though. I do. I
But
kiss myself because I'm behind the
but at the same time, if you don't really believe it, like you believe it.
Yeah,
If you
I
don't
do.
really believe it, then it's fake, right? So one of the first things I teach someone is boundaries. When you know how to say no, right? How many times do we agree to things and allow ourselves to be taken advantage of because we want to please someone else, right? That's giving away your power. So when you allow yourself to set boundaries and say no, that's the first form of self-love.
I say no quite a lot with people in my inbox. Like I said, I had someone talk about the masterclass they're doing for intuition. And I'm like, well, no, thanks. I already am guided by that every day, my own intuition, so I don't need it. So, you know what I mean? But some
Yeah.
people would feel bad about saying no. Some people might not even answer because they'd be avoiding the issue rather than actually,
Yeah.
facing it and saying no thanks. And it's good to practice saying no thanks. Actually, years ago, I met someone. Well, I didn't meet someone. It's virtually. They were talking about hugging themselves, and I laughed years ago, and I didn't believe that. And I thought, hugging yourself, how weird is that, and creepy and yucky. And now I'm the opposite. Now I'm like, oh yeah, give yourself a hug, stroke your hair, tell you love yourself, Sandra. It's great. And so I've changed myself a lot. So I'm a person who does work on my beliefs and change them if I think they're going to be helpful and beneficial, because that's what is the key, isn't it? A person has to believe that the gain they're going to get, the result they're going to get, is going to be worth the pain of the change they're going to go through to get it.
Exactly. And here's the interesting part too. There's no guarantee. We don't know what the other side looks like. And oftentimes it's 1,000 times better than we could have imagined, right? And here's the thing is we have to surrender and let go to what that looks like. It's a lesson I learn all the time. I can't even begin to tell you how many times like I'm stuck on what it's going to look like. And then some shiny object shows up over here and I'm like, get out of my way. You don't look like what I want it to look like. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to check you out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So it's the surrender, because when you want something badly, sometimes the answer is where someplace you never imagined that it would be. And it's about the surrendering and let go of control. And that's a big part struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, with my diary confessions book, I know that I have fears around that, but I'm going to release it because I plan to do something I haven't really talked about. Is a YouTube ad for it, and that's something I've made as a contract with myself. After it's come out and hopefully get a few reviews, then I want to do a YouTube ad. I've never done a paid ad in my life, but my intuition's telling me I want you to do it for this book, and I want you to see how it goes. And I'm like, God, I was talking to God every day because I believe God and the universe work hand in hand, which some people tend to believe either spirituality or God, one or the other, not both, but I mix both together. And I'm always like talking directly to God like he's my friend every day. And people don't necessarily understand that. They're like, how do you talk to God? I'm like, because I just do. We have that type of relationship. And so I'm like, you're giving me a huge challenge here, God. And I'm like, yes, you can handle it. It's fine. And so I'm like, don't worry about it. You'll do it. And I coach myself a lot as well because I have anxiety. Something that I find very effective, which I don't know if other people can do, is I coach myself through situations. So
Oh
for
yeah.
do other people do that? Is that normal, or is it only specific people that can do that, like coaches themselves and stuff?
It depends on how self-aware you are. So in my case, I'll get into a repeated pattern and then I recognize it because sometimes it starts out unconscious and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there I go again. And then I'll be like, how's that working for you, Lisa? And then I kick myself in the butt and I do something different. And here's the thing, you have to do something different. That's the key, because trying to do this and solve a problem using the same mindset over and over again, this is Albert Einstein saying, is the definition of insanity. So when you change your mind and you decide that you're going to solve something, you have to shift the way you think about something so you can solve it from a different place.
What are the best steps for people to take who are listening to this about how to change their mindset? I mean, I have changed my mindset numerous times, but I'd like to hear how you would,
Right.
especially around money. If you were to give like 5 steps for them to next do to change their mindset about money, for example, how would that work?
Well, you want to look at, what was first of all, you have to want to change it, right? That's the first thing. It's like, it's the acknowledgement of it. That's the key. It's like when someone decides to stop drinking, hi, I'm so-and-so, and they show up in AA. The acknowledgement is everything. Then you want to take a look at, where did these beliefs come from? Was it something that actually happened in my life that caused this? Did I possibly get fired and we had scarcity and lost our house? I mean, that's a major trauma that's happened in their life. So you want to write that down. You want to write down all of your beliefs around money. You may be surprised at how many you have. And then the idea is you want to take a look at that now. Look at your family history. Did you inherit that? Was it your parents? Did your grandparents have that? Where did it come from? So it's a lot of investigating. Then you want to start to release it using that release method, the should I let it go. It's too big to be overarching like an umbrella, just money itself. But if you break it down into bite-sized pieces and release each one, it gets easier. Once you've released it, then you want to start to think about, well, what do I want to believe about money? Is that money can be of service to others, that we can help people, that money will make my life easier, that people with money are good. You want to really work on and keep positive that abundance is everywhere for all of us, for the taking, and it's limitless, right? So we have to create those new mindsets, and then you have to live by them, because it's one thing to say you're going to change. I had someone who came to me to lose weight, and she lost 20 pounds. She had 100 to lose, and then she sabotaged herself and stopped coming. And I had to have a conversation with her, and she's like, it's a long story, but she said, what if I lose the weight and my husband still doesn't find me attractive? Then what?
It's very interesting, isn't it?
Right? So we have these ways of sabotaging ourselves all the time and justifying it. So I invite people to look at, are you making excuses? Is there a reason why? Because that's also part of the belief systems, and belief systems can be really deeply entrenched. And that's why the work I do, we just go right into, a guided meditation, ask your higher self, what is the part of you that has made this decision? How old were you? Release that, let it go, and replace it with what you wish you could have had. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, I realized that I've been blocking myself all this time and it was so easy.
So when you say about the release, you said that you have to say words to yourself, like think about,
should I let it go? Yes. Could I let it go? Yes. When? Now. It's the thoughts that are releasing it and letting it go. And then what do I wish I could have about money? Well, money benefits people. I can be of service. I can hire people and then help other people feed their families. I can do this with money. I can do that with money, and really change the way I see the use of money and how it can be used. But if you haven't accessed those beliefs that are holding you back, you're going to keep sabotaging yourself.
Do you also have scenarios where people think they should want to make loads of money because that's how they've been programmed, when really they're not motivated by that? They're motivated by other things other than money.
I haven't had that. I've had people who make a lot of money who are still in scarcity, who are driven by that scarcity, that they go into fear that they're going to lose it all. But or people who just get to a point where they've given up, they've tried and they've worked so hard and they just believe money isn't for me. And this is the thing that's really important. Money isn't for everyone, from the standpoint of there are people who enjoy living very simply and are very happy. So money is not the driver. It's that self love. It's the self, am I enjoy in what I do? Am I being of service? One of the things that people don't understand, and they do this in all types of addiction therapy, is the first thing they do is they want you to be of service to others. That's the way you heal yourself. How can I help others? And through helping others, you then help yourselves. That's where you bring joy, unless you're pathological narcissist.
Yes, this is true. And I've come across, I talk about narcissists on my other channel quite a lot because I've come into contact with quite a few of them. But I do say something about law of attraction, which most people don't know about, and most people don't think, and most people are not saying, is that you don't just attract what you are, you attract what others need. And that's what I've learned over the years is, if someone has a lack of something, they want what you've got sometimes.
Yes, or you're attracting the hidden part of you. It's the mirror.
I know that a lot of people believe you attract what you are, and it's to do with your childhood trauma and stuff like that. But
I see it every day.
But I also believe, and my understanding and my own knowledge is that you do attract what other people want and need as well. Because people who, for example, are fitness experts, they've got to the level of fitness they want, they attract people who are not fit. So if everyone was a mirror image, it means the people that are fitness experts that have reached their level of fitness hadn't reached their level of fitness because they're attracting someone who is poor fitness. Do you see what I mean? And people who are kind-hearted do still attract people who are dark, because opposites attract. And if someone's kind and loving and they're lacking love in their own life, they will attract those people that lack love in their own life because they want that, they need it.
We love people the way we want to be loved, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people, they for example, like I've had a lot of trauma, but I don't turn to the dark side and be resentful and be having like in terms of like like having revenge and stuff like this, which obviously some narcissistic people do.
Right.
And I think you have a path, you can choose which way to go. So regardless of how everyone, like someone treats me, I won't treat someone badly just because they treat me that way. Do you know what I mean?
And that's one of the greatest lessons that you can learn is forgiveness. And that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But what I will say is the highest thing that you can do is forgive someone, and forgive them without them having said, I'm sorry.
This is interesting because I think you can move on with your life without forgiveness, which is very controversial because I think you let things go and move on.
Well, the letting go is forgiveness. Okay, it's another word for it. Like for me, there were people who created a lot of pain in my life, and I let them go. I put down the backpack full of bowling balls and I set it aside, and I walked away. That's forgiveness. I don't hold any grudges. I'm completely neutral when I think about them. And so, but they've never acknowledged what they did. They've never acknowledged any of it. And I'm good with that because I've forgiven, because I've let it all go.
That's interesting, because I follow an actual trauma therapist, and he does that for a living.
Yeah.
And he says we don't have to forgive people necessarily. If we do, it
I
should
don't know who these therapists you're following.
No, he is really good. He's Patrick. He is really good. He's a licensed therapist, and he thinks very differently to other people. And he says, like, forgiveness should be the last thing you do if you do it. You don't have to do that. So, because otherwise it doesn't hurt. He believes you should hold people accountable for their actions, and that can actually help you to overcome the past trauma by holding the people who did things to you, that holding them accountable for their actions, basically. And so he has a completely different way of thinking that is very controversial, if you like, but I agree with quite a lot of what he says. He's he's not trauma informed, he's a trauma specialist. But Patrick, I can't remember his surname, but he is amazing. He's a licensed therapist in the United States, so people in the United Kingdom can't have him, but he is really good at what he does. And he will dispel a lot of the myths or things that people say about things such as you have to forgive in order to heal. So he says you don't have to.
I'd be curious to hear. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear more about it, because some people have the definition of forgive, and actually hearing to walk up to someone and say, I forgive you. And the way I think of it is, what did someone do for me, not to me? So they gave me a gift for some reason, that whatever the pain that they caused or whatever happened in our relationship, because it takes two, I take responsibility for it. But when I let it go, I don't carry it anymore. So it's not that I've walked up to these people and said, I forgive you, because one of them, two of them would laugh at me. But at the same time, it's not about that. It's the letting go and moving on. And I think that is a key to having peace.
I want to move on to ask you about the documentary movie that you're in. It's a movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joe Vitale.
Yeah. Yes. So
how did you get involved in that, and when is it out?
It's out next fall, I think. They're finishing up the editing this spring, and then they send it to all the festivals, the film festivals, so that they can get awards for it. But what happened was, I was part of a forgiveness group, the Ho'oponopono group, which and then I was also doing that work on my own, and someone had contacted me and said, they're looking for coaches to be interviewed in the, for the movie. And I interviewed with 3 different people, had conversations, and they said, okay, you'd be great for it. And they came to my house, and we filmed in my house. It was a full day for 3 minutes. It was a full day of filming. And we'll see. I was very excited. They asked some really great questions, and we went through an actual healing session where, to see how I work, and I did some ancestral work. So yeah, it was really exciting. And I, all of these things that are happening is because I'm taking action. Was that out of my comfort zone? Absolutely. Was writing a book out of my comfort zone? Absolutely. I was telling stories about my life, my family members, things that happen. You never know how people are going to react, but you need to stay true to you. I never want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be of service, help humanity, help people get out of their pain. And because I know what it's like to go into those deep depressions, it is not fun. It is not fun.
Yeah, I used to be depressed and suicidal. It was actually fibromyalgia that freed me of depression. It freed me, which is, I was depressed, and I used to have negative thinking ever since being a kid, ever since I can remember. And then when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 2012, in January 2012, it took me 6 months to come to terms with the fact I got a disability for life. I know some other people might be like, well, you shouldn't think like that. But I actually think it for me, and I'm the thinking to accept that. And once I accepted it, it took me 6 months. I all of a sudden knew that I was talking negatively to myself that I'd done for years, and that I had to stop it there and then, because if I continued to talk negatively to myself, then that would drive physical pain into my body, and I would end up on crutches or in a wheelchair like so many others with a condition. So after all those years, I just stopped talking negatively to myself just like that. And it was like incredible. So it was that saved my
That
life.
was that was a great teacher. And I totally, my mother has fibromyalgia, and it's a lot of it is really beating yourself up. It's a lot about, not having a lot of good things to say about yourself. So good for you that you figured it out. You're a really remarkable, extraordinary woman, and you have some really great gifts, and it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I really feel honored and grateful that you've had me on your show. This was a lot of fun, and I really hope that we have the opportunity to do this again.
Yeah, it'd be fabulous. Where can people find you, Lisa?
So they can find my book on Amazon, In Every Belief is a Lie. And there we go. In Every Belief is a Lie. They can find me on my website is Lisa Schermerhorn Coaching, and they can also lisamindset.com. Just change that. So Schermerhorn is such a bear to spell. I'm available on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I just got on TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing with TikTok. I'm still learning. But yeah, if you want to get me through my website, Lisa Schermerhorn Coaching, love to help you. And I love talking to people and talking about their why, if they want to figure out what their why and their purpose is.
Yay! I did actually put some links already in the description of this video.
Wonderful.
So people can talk to you. But if you've got any more links you want me to add, I'll be happy to do those. I put your website, Facebook business page, I think it was, the coaching one.
Okay, Lisa Schermerhorn Coaching, yeah.
Yeah, and also your YouTube I put as well. So
thank you. Yeah, I've got a bunch of videos on there and interviews. So
and your books on Amazon, I linked to that as well. So people can go and get that. Yay!
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful, I don't know if it's evening there for you. It's midday.
It's 8:33 p.m.
3:33 here. So awesome.
Yay! It's lovely to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. You take care.
And don't forget, if you're listening to this, to remember to put action in what you do, because nothing happens without action.
Exactly.